I'm getting my shot. Oh.
Yeah.
See what?
You guys know I've never missed one.
Yeah, shove by. Yeah.
Everybody ready? I'm here to announce the worst kept secret in the state of Hawaii. Speaker Saiki and I are here this afternoon to inform you that we have come up with a draft bill that we're going to submit, and we're going to convene in special session starting on Monday to address the rail issue. And with that, I'd like to have Speaker Saiki give an overview. Oh, certainly, I'd like to also thank Congresswoman Hanabusa and Senator Schatz, who have been in contact with FTA and has provided information as far as what the FTA requires in assisting us in making some recommendations in the draft bill.
So the President and I would also like to acknowledge and thank the key committee chairs from the House and the Senate who have worked on this draft proposal over the past couple of months. They put in a lot of time and effort and energy, and we appreciate all of their work. So what I'll do is just outline the major components of the draft bill. The proposal is to extend the general excise tax surcharge on Oahu for 3 additional years from December 31st, 2027 through December 31st, 2030. And this will provide approximately $1.046 billion. Second, the bill will raise the hotel room tax, the transit accommodation tax, by 1% from 9.25% to 10.25% for 13 years from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2030. And this will provide approximately $1.326 billion. The bill will also establish a mass transit special fund to capture the GET surcharge and TAT revenue. The bill will also increase the county's share of the TAT from the current amount of $93 million to $103 million, and this will be a permanent increase. So as you know, in the past it's been changed from year to year. The amount has changed from year to year. This will be a permanent increase. The bill will also reduce the State Department of Taxation's administrative fee on the GET surcharge from 10% to 1%. The bill will also require a state audit, and this audit will be done by the state auditor to review not just finances but also management and operations of HARP. The bill will continue the existing law to require that funds not be used for operations, maintenance, or administrative costs related to rail. And finally, the bill will authorize the Senate President and the Speaker to each appoint 2 individuals to serve on the HARP Board of Directors as ex officio non-voting members. I'd like to ask Senator Dela Cruz to explain some of the numbers behind this bill.
So we'll give this to you a little bit later, but here's a graph that shows by us upfronting with the GT and the TAT how much we'll reduce in finance costs. So because of this, Hart originally came in at 1.4 billion for finance costs, and we'll be able to reduce that amount by $208 million. We're also not going to be paying for operations of Hart, so that's going to include a total of 281 million. We're not going to be paying for marketing, that's 151 million. So we can reduce the 281, the 151, and the $208 million for financing. Because of the way we're using the TAT, that's going to help save the taxpayers quite a bit of money. We're also using 3%, which FTA used for their projections. The TAT growth is going to be at 8%. That brings us to the total that the speaker talked about, ensuring that we can cover the shortfall that Hart currently has.
I'm not here to talk about the details. I'm here to talk about the work that the legislature undertook. This was difficult, but this is by far the most productive, most collaborative, most significant work that's been done to make rail happen in years. This was not easy, and this is not done. The legislature still has to conduct its special session. The city still has work to do. Hart, of course, has to submit documents to the Federal Transit Administration, so we're not done. But this is incredibly important progress, and it's important to recognize that this, as a revenue package, is bigger than anything that was contemplated during the regular session. And so I'm just here to congratulate my current and former colleagues for their good work. Colleen?
Hello, everyone. Like Senator Schatz, we have been working on this whole issue from Washington, D.C. We have had the various conversations with the FDA, and we must be very clear that the success of this project is going to be contingent upon the legislature's ability to fund the rail system. It is unfortunate in that many of you know that I was a chair of Hart as well. It is unfortunate that we are in the position that we are now, but I want to thank and congratulate the members of the legislature, the chairs that are not here as well, for the hard work that they put into this, because without them, it would not be possible. I think it should basically address some of the fears and concerns that people may have, that the legislature was not committed. This is a plan that clearly shows that they are committed to a city project. Let's not forget, that's exactly what this is. This is a city project that requires the assistance every 2 years, it seems like, of the state to again raise the general excise tax and some other source of funding in order for it to happen. So with that, I'll give it back to Senate President.
Okay, since there are no questions, I'd like to thank you very much for all coming. We're available for a few questions.
Senate President, the city has already come out and said that this deal, this arrangement, by their calculations will be 600 to 900 million short. Do you agree with that assessment?
No.
Can you say why?
In the required rate, as they mentioned, they require, or they being the FTA, a 3% growth rate for the revenue. The Council of Revenues and other sources that West Machida has been vetting for us put the number at 4.5%. So we believe that there's adequate funding in there if we just meet our normal growth rates. And so when you look at the bill, sure, at 3%, you can reach that conclusion, but we expect to return greater.
How about the 8% on the TAT? The city's saying that's very high.
It's all historical average.
Senator, now that you guys have come up with this bill, what's the likelihood that this is going to pass during the special session? How confident do you feel that it will pass?
Well, I think the most important thing that I forgot to mention at the very beginning is that as soon as session was done, Speaker Psyche and I had numerous events that we jointly attended, and we took advantage of the time to start engaging in the conversation. And it's been productive, and in spite of the way that we adjourned, you know, we immediately said we need to work together to come up with a solution. I'm certainly optimistic by calling our members back in that this is something that will gain a majority of support.
You should also note that there are two ways to convene a special session. One is where the governor can call us back in. The second is where the members can call themselves back in. And that's what happened in this situation. The members have called themselves back in by signing a petition. And the requirement is that 2/3 of the members of each body must sign a petition to convene themselves in special session. So the members have signed, we have the requisite number of signatures, and that petition was filed today.
So the 10 million for the TAT for the neighbor island counties, does that appease them, or are you going to use your Oahu majority of 31 in the House and 17 in the Senate and just shove it down the
Well, I mean, I'll speak for the House. There was a concern by neighbor island representatives that there be some accommodation made for neighbor islands if we increase the TAT. And so the restoration of the $10 million for the TAT is helpful for them.
And again, let me point out, the restoration of the 10 million is not for the neighbor islands. The 10 million goes to the 103 million that all 4 counties enjoy. So it's also giving some predictability to the city as well as the neighbor island counties. Will all of the neighbor island counties be happy? Probably not. Is the hotel industry happy that we're at 1% for the next 13 years? Probably not. Are taxpayers happy with the 0.5% being extended another 3 years? Probably not. So there was a lot of give on a lot of fronts to come to a compromise and find something that we think that there is a sacrifice by a lot of the parties who are involved so that we could come to some level of agreement.
Is 2.3 billion still about the correct value to put on your projections?
2.4.
2.4 billion, okay. In the time since the mayor saw that worksheet then, they had crunched some numbers, and they now have a new projection of costs that has the contingency in there. I mean, it's coming out to about 8.7 billion before financing. I mean, how do you react to this new cost being in there now, and the mayor saying now it's still too little?
Hi, Gina. As many of you know, I served as the HART chair. And as soon as I saw what the mayor said and tried to get through what he's talking about, as all of you are aware, I'm one of those who actually read those crazy documents. So the additional 500 plus million, almost 600 million that the mayor has come up with is what they're calling a stress test. The stress test is a function of the financial plan of the FFGA, which was executed or proposed in June of 2012. What that does is to say, okay, we've questioned whether or not your 5.03 growth rate on GET is correct. So go recalculate it at 4.3, which is what HART did, by the way. The other one is your 10% growth in the capital cost overrun. We don't think that's correct, so go find how to finance it. And that's where we all know it as the TECP, which is the commercial paper. That's where the 500 million comes from. This is June 2012. The reason I raise that is because in September of 2012, that infamous PMOC risk refresh, which gives you the probabilities of the cost, was produced. That is really what sends the city and HART back to the legislature. It's a 2014 risk refresh that asked for 910 and then 1.2 billion, not a penny more, remember that? And it's a 2016 PMOC risk refresh that sends them back now, where they said 6.8 was more than adequate in 2015, then all of a sudden 2016, it's not enough, And now we're looking at whether it's 8.2 or this number here. So I guess the bottom line is, in any document, you can go and find whatever you want. The fact that the PMOC's risk refresh, which is the document that I believe controls more than page 4-3, is what we should be concentrating on. So I think, with all due respect to the mayor and the city, they can't come out as they've done in the past and pick numbers out of the air. If they want to do that, they have to be fair. And to say that these figures have been there all along is, in my opinion, not true. I could use another word, but it's not true. So given that, I think that what the legislature has worked on is the correct figures. And as has been alluded to by Senate President, when he says we're using 3%, remember the state of Hawaii is required to use council revenues. 3% is not council revenues. It's substantially lower. Council revenues go from 3.8 to 3.4 to 3.24, and who knows, next year it could change again. But notwithstanding, I think 3% is very, very conservative for the growth rate of the GET. So having said that, I think that with all due respect, that $500 or $600 million may be a figure to cover up for something else. I don't know what it may be, but it's definitely not something that has been presented to the legislature or documented in the reports that they have.
Senator President, I believe in the unicorns and tooth fairy, but this is a government public works project, and cost overruns are almost expected. Should the public expect cost overruns and be back here in 2 years?
Well, I guess you need to define cost overruns. We're required to participate in an open competitive bid process. And when certain contracts went out to bid during the hot construction market, we got higher prices. Where that market's going to be when we go, we're not sure. But again, by using the conservative 3% growth rate, we're optimistic that in fact they won't have to come back. I will say that all of the negotiations up through yesterday have been strictly between the House and the Senate. Senator Schatz and Congresswoman Hanabusa have not participated in any of those conversations, but when this question came up about would the proposed draft meet the FTA standards, we reached out to them to verify FTA information, as you can see by Congresswoman Hanabusa's comments, by Senator Schatz being with us here today. They have committed, first and foremost, that they believe that this is a sound financial plan and that they are going to go back to Washington, D.C. and do everything within their power to make the case to the FTA about why what we're considering, in fact, meets the requirements.
So Congresswoman, you're confident, and Senator Schatz as well, you guys are confident that this will meet the proper test for the FTA and that they will ultimately accept this as a recovery plan, as a solid financial plan for rail?
I think we're cautiously optimistic. I'll just say, I think we're cautiously optimistic, but of course, Hart has to develop the document, and we have to pass a bill, and the city has to do some fiscal adjustments of its own. And so I'm optimistic that we've taken the most important first step, but we can't presuppose how FTA will deal with it except to say that this was an absolutely essential first step to give us a good chance.
I concur with what Senator Schatz said. Remember, the bottom line on all of this is they've done their part, or they will do their part, assuming this goes through the special session. But it's the city and Hart. Remember, they are the signatory. The city is the signatory in the FFGA. That is what we're talking about, that contract, that obligation. So it's going to be up to them as to how they present it. We assume that they will do a good job in making their case, but this is that financial plan that's missing from that recovery plan that's due on September 15th. So we're hoping, I think we're cautiously optimistic that they will be able to come up with something. We can't presuppose how they're going to present it, but I assume that given the figures that we are hearing here, that it should be accurate.
The mayor was here today. Did he agree to the terms of this bill in any way or buy into this package? Anyone?
We hugged when we left.
That's a good sign, right?
You know, he's back looking at it, and we're talking about how to work together to go forward.
And then the mayor has questioned the whole idea of having the city be required to invoice the state for reimbursements. He's questioned the legality of that in his letter. Can anybody speak to that? Is that considered a legal provision? Or? Is that on the list?
Well, we've had the Attorney General look at it, and it meets their test. So we're proceeding as with the recommendation of the Attorney General.
Speaker, the mayor said in the meeting last night he felt this was a take it or leave it deal. Is it?
It's taken a lot of effort to reach a consensus on this bill, and it will be very difficult to change the terms at this point.
Can you characterize last night's meeting? The mayor's described it at our edit board today as a heated exchange, and I think he may have walked out. Can you just explain what happened last night?
I would just say that it was a passionate discussion and exchange of ideas.
Family conversation.
And, you know, there's been so much emotionally invested in this. Everybody's passionately trying to do what they believe is right. And, you know, he decided that he needed to take some of the term sheet numbers and walk across the street to Honolulu Holly and take a closer look before he could answer some of the questions that were posed to him. And we certainly thought that that was a good idea to look at the numbers more carefully. And we allowed that time. And I think the most important thing is, was he here at his 4 o'clock scheduled time with Hart and his council members? Yes, he was. Were we all present in the speaker's office for the scheduled meeting? Yes, we were. Did we sit down and have a productive conversation this afternoon? Yes, we did.
And for the federal delegation, have you guys directly urged the mayor to accept this?
Yes.
Both of you?
I haven't talked to him, to be honest, but Brian has.
Okay.
I just want to point out, going back to the expenses submitted to DAGs. So this is to really put forth an effort of transparency and accountability. So when the city submits its expenses to DAGs, the comptroller will review it, make sure it meets the criteria to be refunded. It'll send a list to Budget and Fiscal Services as to what to reimburse. 10 days after that, the budget director is required to put those expenses online. So the public will get to see what the city's spending on and what for and how much it is.
And the concept for the state drawdown requirement was taken from the federal requirement, where the city is Hart is required to submit documentation to receive its federal drawdown.
So House Speaker, just to summarize, is this the beginning of the special session, the beginning point, or is this the end? Is it going to sit a wash?
This is the beginning, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you very much for your time.
In the preview with the FTA, did they say anything about additional contingency being needed or any potential shortfall of contingency?
Are you talking to me?
Anybody whoever talked with FTA?
Anybody who's not leaving?
Whoever's leaving.
Wait, Gina.
If I understood you right, that it was previewed with the FTA that this would do it, that this would work.
No, we didn't say that it was previewed with the FDA. I didn't say that, neither did Brian. We don't know what was this whole deal until, we don't still have a deal. Remember, this has got to go through special session. It's got to go to public hearing. So we're just commenting on the elements of what we see here, but it has not been previewed. And as far as I know, I don't know if the mayor's done it, but we have not previewed it.
And the FTA has a general, I don't know if it's a policy or just an approach where they don't, because the parties to the FFGA are the county and Hart, they don't directly interact with the legislature because that can get a little complicated for them. So they have not seen a draft.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.